right, Michael, welcome. We're really glad you could take the time to introduce us to a bit to your character.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, but first, I want to start with a little bit about the person, the man behind the character. So, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and what you want to share. You don't have to get detailed, but
Okay. Well, I am originally born from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I moved down to Fredericksburg, Virginia for some opportunities working for the federal government. I started my career out as a musical theater major, and I ended up switching over to business. My role playing experience, I played in 97, 98, and 99 as an actual player. In about 2001 until about 3 days ago, I've been DMing. So I haven't had a lot of chance to become a player. Heath can attest, the only game I've ever actually been a character in that's actually gone any amount of time was his last one he ran. So that's pretty much my role playing experience. I do a little bit of everything. I've kind of leaned out of the fantasy kind of genre, and I'm kind of sticking more towards noir, definitely science fiction, things of that nature. Just I try to do a lot of various one shots so I can introduce people to new systems. I've done a successful Kickstarter, and I'm actually in the process of starting a second Kickstarter for a tabletop that I'm working on getting published with Evil Hat Productions on the Fate system. So that's pretty much my resume.
okay. But what is it about role playing that draws you? Why? I know what I see about you in role playing that draws me to your campaigns and your characters, but what pulls you into role playing?
Well, I think it pretty much just goes to I took acting very seriously in Pennsylvania when I was still living there, and I think having that gap, I kind of need to express the creativity and my talent a little bit. So role playing is the next best thing, and you don't always have to be perfect and professional when you're role playing, but it is what it is.
Yeah. All right. So tell us, not yet going into a whole lot on the personality, et cetera, but tell us what race and class you chose and what drew you to that. Why is that combination something you wanted to play?
The race I chose was a Goliath / half Goliath. I think for mechanical purposes, it's a Goliath.
Yep.
For the story purposes, it's a half Goliath. Class I chose was paladin because really, with all my experience with Dungeons and Dragons being mostly in second edition, the paladin, the warrior, and the cleric are the only three I have an intimate knowledge of how to role play, how to do mechanics, synergies with both their own abilities, spells, and teammates. So I just, I stuck with what I know. It might be a one-trick pony, but I would like to be in a very effective one-trick pony.
All right. Are there any traits you share with your character?
Being pretty damn tall. That's about it.
All right.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you laugh, but I approach this character pretty much. There's inserting yourself into a role, which, you might do if you're playing like a video game and you make the character look like yourself. And then there's playing a role. This character, was kind of an amalgamation of some ideas and some things to assist the story element. So I'm kind of assuming the role of this half Goliath person to go on these incredible journeys.
All right. Yeah, you and I had that conversation about those two different ways to approach a character. I really like that that summation of style. So, all right. Well, that brings us then to your character. So, tell us, what's your character's name, and give us a physical and a mental description.
Okay. I'm playing a female half Goliath. Her known name is Hyacinth, like the flower. Caradoc. It's a kind of British Isles Avalonian name because it's one of the Knights of the Round Table. So that's kind of where I got the two ideas. She's a like I said, half Goliath. She's about 7 feet, a little bit under that, probably about 6'11" and some change, about 296 pounds. It's a lot of kind of endomorphic lean muscle. Her biggest trait, I guess, or the first noticeable thing outside of her size, is that she is missing her left arm from about about mid arm down.
The mid forearm. Yeah.
And that's that came from a few things. It came from the idea of the last character I played in Heath's game had a deformity, and that was missing an arm. So I kind of wanted to bring that character forward a little bit because I like kind of playing that character. And trying to think of it on a kind of almost like a realistic level. I saw there was going to be some kind of issue with a human female giving birth to a Goliath. So I manifested that in the idea of there's going to be some kind of birth defect, being she doesn't have an arm, and it's something she's had. It's not a disability necessarily because she's used her training and her natural talents to just deal with it. And she doesn't even notice it half the time unless somebody brings it up. She doesn't have the need to cover it with anything, or she doesn't have any hooks or weird shit on it.
Right. So it's not as a result of an injury. That
correct.
Okay. So that
she's had it all of her life. Yeah.
All right. So tell us a bit about her personality.
So I kind of modeled her to be, she's relatively stoic. She's forward and very pragmatic. She speaks when spoken to. She'll interject thoughts and theories of wisdom when it's applicable. She's not necessarily, I wouldn't call her the face of the party, but she does know how to deal with certain situations because of her upbringing in the Taven city of Crownport.
Taevara,
excuse me.
Well, we've got to make sure because there is a distinction, which I'm going to ask you about in a little bit. So, all right. What? Tell us a little bit about her family then. What is her background in that? And
so she was born on one of the Isles of Volcani. That's where she was born. However, she has very little to no knowledge of any of the Goliath side of her family. The name Hyacinth Caradoc is not the only name she's known by, but we'll get into that when it's applicable. She was raised pretty much by a more progressive group within the Church of Taevara. She has a very close bond to her grandmother, who's been sort of her surrogate mother. Her grandfather was more of this is his duty to raise this child. He's just going to do it, and once he's done, he's going to go about his business. She has one really good close mentor who's like a friend. She doesn't really have any type of fatherly figure bond. She hasn't really needed that kind of fatherly figure in her life, so she's had her grandfather with as as kind of to the point and strict as he was in her upbringing. So that's essentially it. She's pretty much being accepted and allowed to be raised in this church because of the potential that devotees to the church who are of 7 to 9 feet tall could potentially bring to a war front. So she's kind of consider her like a prototype almost that's being accepted for that reason.
Okay. So you avoided talking about her actual parents. Do you want to keep that then for in-game reveal? Or okay. All right. So give us a little bit on her. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and jump into I've been saving one wild card for each of you. So I'm going to ask you about how does she approach the worship of Teva, who, she's the primary good god in the world of Odari, but her worship is kind of fractured. It is definitely a split between Taevara, the nation that is ruled by by a priesthood of hers, and the rest of the world who worships her, who look at them like they're nuts because they're so conservative. No music, no dancing, no alcohol, no arcane magic really is not a good thing. I jokingly, and I don't know whether I'm not going to use my normal description, but they're very autocratic. They did go through that brief period of opening up, which is when Hyacinth came into the picture. But how does she relate to that view of Teva?
She takes a lot of her grandfather's stance because of basically how she was raised around him. She, at this point, when she will be introduced, is of the more conservative, the more the rules are the rules for a reason. We follow these rules, whether they make sense or not. It's not our place to question them. She, because of her position as basically one of these protectors of a reliquary, kind of low level, kind of, I wouldn't really call them knights or anything, but they're just low level kind of.
You're not the common soldier.
Yeah, they're a step above the common soldier, but they're not the full-fledged Templars who might hang around. So she takes it very seriously. She has had no reason to doubt the faith, and until something makes her question it, she's probably not going to either. Which leads back to her whole pragmatism, which it's kind of hard to see pragmatism in a religious standpoint, but in the world of in the world where gods are breaking planets and creating dragons and stuff, sometimes you got to take a little pragmatism to heart.
Yeah. I mean, you literally have one goddess's rage, literally, as a hurricane in the middle of this world. Never stopped for 800 years. So
so you don't have to really put in too many questions of faith when you can literally see, and especially with the fact that she is a paladin as a class, there is the physical sign that there's divine magic. So
yeah,
I guess there's a god or multiple gods or however.
So most of everybody else, I've been asking them about the web of connections. Your character was created after everybody, so you're coming in separate. I actually don't know how to ask that question, because now that I'm thinking about it, it gives something away. I'll come back to that. What sort of quirks does Hyacinth have? Those weird bits of behavior that you don't explain to anybody, but people might look and be like, what is she doing?
Well, she has an unusual, I wouldn't call it a fetish, but maybe an unusual drive to, you see this, like I said, this very stoic soldier woman monstrosity thing, 7 feet tall, but she will stop and find these moments of peace, and she always looks for things of very bright colors, plants, animals, things of that nature. She's taken to using a certain plant that is found and grinding it up and basically pseudo dyeing some of her hair. That was kind of another bring over from my original character that I played in his first game. Just that character was doing it with the blood of the enemies. This one's doing it with
light, dark,
yeah.
All right. So we did create kind of a different take on the Goliaths for this character. Tell us a little bit about that. What your view on what she is in that sense?
So we're going for a more of a fire giant lineage for these Goliaths. So she has a darker skin. She doesn't have that kind of look of the normal 5th edition Goliaths have, like the mountainous kind of Nordic almost look and background. So she's definitely more of an island of fire and heat and inhospitable climate. She doesn't bear the tattooing, which isn't really tattooing. It's some form of magical rune, something that the Goliaths usually have. She does not have that for some reason. Let's just say that. So yeah, and I think we were homebrewing a few rule sets for her to kind of give it more of a theme of a fire Goliath, half Goliath, I should say, instead of the mountain or ice Goliaths that are in 5th edition as is. So
yeah. All right. So it, again, without going into any actual spoilery stuff, but what is the one big story arc you would like to see your character go through, not counting any of what I'm doing, like for the grand story, but personal story arc? What is it you're looking forward to most with her?
I would say she knows that she has a completely other side of a family out there somewhere, and she knows absolutely nothing about them. She has no idea if she'll ever meet them. She doesn't know if she has brothers, sisters. She doesn't know how giant her father is. She doesn't know anything about them. So I think depending on what is in store to set her journey into motion, that would probably be a personal goal she would try to attain at some point, is just learning something, whether if it's just she has a second cousin 9 times removed or something like that. So
okay, all right. And then the last thing, I'm giving everybody a chance. If you were to, one thing about the campaign, the world, whatever, that I've not told you or answered for you, what would you want to ask me? Knowing that I may well tell you I can't answer because of spoilers, but what's something about the world that you'd like to see?
Is there an island somewhere that was based off of the Dark Sun setting?
I will say that at the moment there really aren't any desert islands per se in Vidari. I, however, am adding some new island areas, and there will be. It's not quite Dark Sun. There's going to be a vaguely Arabic area. I don't like using that as a overall, because it's the pre-Arab mythological state, but it's similar to Vidari. It shattered, it broke, and so all these different tribes had to learn to live and work together, and so how that developed. And then there will also be a East Asian area that potentially could come into play.
Cool. Dark Sun was one of the first campaigns I ever ran as a DM. So, you can kind of tell by things that I've done in the past that I've kind of always kept Dark Sun as like a very kind of undertone to, a lot of character ideas I've come up with and a lot of stories I've put my characters through, even if it's like a completely non-fantasy genre. So,
yeah. Preservers and Defilers were one of the. I'm not going to say I was a big fan of Dark Sun, but I liked the sort of idea of that fight. So the Preserver versus Defilers. So, but all right. Well, Michael, I really appreciate your taking the time, and I'm looking forward to getting to see more of your character.
All right, thank you.